Well, we served on a board together for several years. It was the Aga Khan Trust Award for Architecture. And what always struck me about Norman was the clarity of his thinking, his ability to take a very complicated issue, one that might even be contentious, and find a way to question it, interrogate it, and make it possible for other people to join in the conversation. He's very sharp, he's very quick, he doesn't waste time, but he's also, and this is the thing that really struck me when we were working together on this board, he's very warm, he's very engaging, and he's very friendly. For somebody who is as renowned as he is, who's as busy as he is, he's a remarkably thoughtful, warm, engaging individual. And of course, he's a cyclist, and anyone who's a cyclist is a good person, from my point of view. And indeed, we discovered a shared passion for spinning wheels. So I like to use a simple analogy here, that if you have a great glass of Rioja, and it comes from a wonderful vineyard, and you put it in a plastic cup, it's going to taste one way. And then if you put it in a beautiful crystal goblet, it's going to taste differently. That's just a sensory reaction. The wine hasn't changed. Your perception of the wine has changed. And I think the same thing is true for museums. You can have an architecture that's not sympathetic to looking at art, to the experience of moving around, engaging and thinking about art, or you can have an architecture that makes that experience better, that creates beautiful proportioned galleries, that understands the way natural light enlivens space, that is very thoughtful about the way you circulate and move. And so I think architecture and art have a symbiotic relationship. The art doesn't change. You know, a great painting by Miro is still a great painting by Miro, but your perception of it can change because of the setting in which you encounter it. And I think great architects understand how to make that happen. You know, great museums are networks. They're circulation networks, they're intellectual networks, they're experiential networks, and they're, of course, artistic networks. And you have to put all of those networks together, and that's where working with a great architect is essential. Well, I think Norman is deeply sympathetic to art. I mean, he's an architect, but he works the way an artist works. There's an enormous amount of creativity to what he does. He loves artists. So I think Norman has found this balance between architecture that's strong, that's present, but that's also very sympathetic to works of art. And you can only get there by, one, looking at art a lot, talking to artists and understanding what they do, and experimenting. And I think of Norman, and this is one of the things that I admired most. He's now in a later stage of life, but he's still experimenting. He's still trying to find new ways to do new things. So that liveliness, that commitment to never resting on what you've done, but always trying to do something new, is the way artists work. That's what an artist does. Every time an artist makes a work of art, it's a new challenge. And I think that's true for every time Norman thinks about a building. And I think his architecture is always a combination of really strong visual gestures and very minimal invasive gestures. And I think of his museum in Nîmes, the Carré, that is still one of my favorite buildings, right? It sits opposite this beautiful Roman building, so it understands its place in the urban fabric of Nîmes. And yet it's both a reflection of that earlier building and a strongly independent space unto itself, all achieved with very spare, minimal gestures. And Norman uses materials brilliantly, but he's really sensitive to light, to space, to the urban patterns of a city. He believes, and that's, I think, what makes him so interesting, he believes that both urban design and architecture need to work together. Then it's not one or the other, it's both. And it's their ability to work together that creates livable and sustainable cities.